Ever since I discovered the original Command & Conquer game back in 1995, real-time strategies have been my favorite genre of computer games outside of the Zelda series. One of the things I find most fascinating about real-time strategies is how perfectly they demonstrate positive feedback. Warzone 2100, with its 400 item long tech tree, is a really good example of this, because upgrades become a type of positive feedback within the gameplay. Sorry, just some of the first stage stuff is a little on the critical side. Alright. Feedback, of course, is when the output of a system is fed back into the input, creating a loop. There are different kinds of feedback, like positive feedback and negative. Don't let those names confuse you. Positive doesn't mean good, negative doesn't mean bad. It just means positive feedback increases the signal, while negative feedback subtracts from the signal, or reduces it. For example, in negative feedback, if you think of an older style arcade racing game, to keep things interesting, the game would take a look at your current speed, and the cars ahead of you would be slowed down slightly, where the cars behind you would be sped up slightly. And this kept things interesting. This way, you're always fighting to maintain your position, but when you are behind, things never become hopeless. When you're ahead, you can't just coast, you have to stay on your toes. This keeps things feeling fun throughout all aspects of gameplay. So that's negative feedback. Real-time strategies, when you're playing against a predictable opponent, like an AI, aren't really so much about strategy as they are about positive feedback. Resources are the foundation of everything. You win by gathering resources at a faster rate than your opponent, allowing you to grow your army larger and faster than your opponent can grow theirs. And the bigger your army is, the more resources you can capture, which allows you to build your army even larger and faster, so you can get more resources, so you can build even more of an army, and so on and so on. In a two-player game, all things being equal, once you have secured 51% of the resources, there really isn't, the match is in the bag, there isn't a whole lot of point of going on. Because once you have 51% of the resources, unless you really screw up, you've won. So again, when playing against predictable opponents, don't think of it in terms of individual troops or individual movements. Think of it as a set of feedback loops, and constantly compare if you were to graph it, compare your curves with what you imagine your opponent's curves to be. So here, right now I'm building more research. More research allows me to increase the effectiveness of everything I already have. So my existing forces become faster, stronger, more durable, and more lethal. My structures become tougher, my intelligent gathering capacities go farther. I unlock new weapons that outclass the starting weapons, and I can even research, which allows me to make my ability to make everything else get better and faster. So it increases into my camera, it increases the slope to make it go from this to this of my getting better at this. So more factories allow me to build more units faster, and factory upgrades allow me to produce more units faster. And of course, more power plants allow me to collect resources faster, and upgrading those power plants give me a further advantage to make things even faster. So yeah, this So this is a map I really like because it forces me to, it's very predictable, it's very balanced, it forces me to go quickly. So yeah, resources are the foundation of everything. Resources are the foundation of everything. So just make sure that yours are increasing faster than your enemies. In a balanced map like this one, it's very easy to see, that the second I take an oil rig, past the center line, I've got the majority of the resources. The match is in the bag. Yeah. So positive feedback is a lot like the cumulative advantage we experience in life. For example, investing is a smart thing to do with your money. Who needs help with their money the most? People who don't have any money to invest in the first place. Rent is pissing money away. Home ownership allows you to build an asset. Who needs assets the most? The people who don't have enough assets to afford the down payment on a house. Awards bring great attention to remarkable people who are doing great things. Who gets those awards? People who are already doing enough great things that they don't need those awards and the additional recognition. Positive feedback, like we see in real-time strategies, rewards the haves at the expense of the have-nots. It creates a system where once you get ahead, you can slack off and just wing it, because at that point, you really have to suck to lose. But the second you fall behind, all the odds are stacked against you. Your only hope is that your opponent screws up in a way you can seize upon. But the longer you wait for this to happen, the more hopeless your chance becomes, because that gap between you and your opponent just grows wider with every passing second. So eventually you reach a point where all you can do is give up quickly or drag out your inevitable defeat as long as possible to make it as bitter for your opponent as possible. So positive feedback, it just creates a system where it just isn't fun to play anymore until some fresh strategy comes along and completely shakes everything up. Negative feedback, like what we saw in the earlier arcade racing games that I mentioned earlier, keep things more fun for everyone. It forces those to get ahead to stay on their toes and keep working because everyone else is right on their tail. Well, those who get stuck behind aren't left in a position where they feel hopeless and just give up. It almost seems like those two types of feedback could be seen as a metaphor for something. So in a balanced map like this one, it's very easy to see that the second I take these oil rigs, my economy is the larger one, and I've won the match. I don't have to play out the second half of this match because I've won it right now. I have more than half, and the computer has no way to catch up, and because it's an AI, it has no ability to surprise me. So I've won right here. I could keep playing and researching, and I think I'll do that, but I've just reached a point where now I've got this whole additional island now, so my resources are going to be growing much faster than theirs. So I've won it right here. I really don't need to play the rest. So another example of positive feedback. A good example of feedback in a practical sense could be a thermostat in your home. Instead of having a furnace that just blasts 21-degree air 24/7, you can have a little sensor that measures the temperature. So you have a furnace that's designed to generate heat at what level is most efficient for it. Let's say that's 50 degrees. So when it gets colder, the furnace turns on and blasts 50-degree air until it says 21, at which case the furnace turns off. When it gets above, it turns on the AC. It's often a more efficient system to rely on feedback than to just blast air 24/7, no matter what. More research. Yeah, I can never have too much research or repair. Dyslexia makes talking and doing things difficult in some ways and easier in others. When I'm distracted by playing video games, for example, my part of brain that gets words confused doesn't confuse words quite as readily. It's kind of amazing. But I also can't catch mistakes that I do make nearly as quickly, so I'm not able to correct them, so I hope my whole spiel kind of made sense. Alright. Yeah. Send this extra guy up here. So this is a small map. So I'm just the machine guns are a really crappy system. They're a generalist weapon, which means they specialized in nothing, but they're cheap, and I can get them to a very high level very quickly, very cheaply. So you know, if I were to go for more specialized weapons like rockets, which are very anti-structural but rockets are very anti-tank but very, very poor when it comes to anti-structure. So I don't particularly care about the enemy tanks, because all I have to do is focus on their resources here, and you know, they can send out all the more advanced tanks they want, but you know what? So many Panzers and Tigers just can't compare with an endless swarm of much shittier Sherman tanks. Same thing with this. I take out their islands, so now they're limited to only 4 resource gathering points, whereas I'm at closer to 40. So it really doesn't matter. Look, their rockets and their flamers all are much more effective than my guns, but they have a small number, I have a large number. You know, I can take out one of their factories and bam, now they can only produce 80% of what I can produce. You know, I'm gonna take out their research. Now they can't research as fast. So now, as their stuff is getting better at this curve, my stuff's getting better at this curve. Oh, send it. Yeah, forgot I sent that wave. Nice. So yeah, like I said, this, is the part that if this was against an unpredictable human would be the exciting part of the match. But I saw this coming, because 5 minutes ago I got the advantage on resources. So yeah, so that's my repair stations. They're just, you set your units so when they get moderate damage, they return, they repair, then they come back for combat. That way I'm not losing anything. Yeah. Really not much more interesting stuff I can really say at this point. Game over.